get started. So, hello to you all and welcome to our 5th Nash Cares Community Education Series event, a panel discussion on mental health and substance use recovery. My name is Robin Wagner and I'm the Bert Nash Center's IT lead manager. September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Recovery Month, and tonight's panel is such an important topic for our community. Before we begin, I would like to thank each one of our panelists for sharing their personal experiences on tonight's topic and taking the time out of their busy schedules to be here. This truly is just the beginning of this work, and we at the Bert Nash Center are excited to have you all here to be a part of this community conversation. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Ameritrust Credit Union, for sponsoring tonight's event. Normally I would invite Tim Mock up here, but Dad duty called tonight, so he unfortunately could not stay for this portion. He did want me to express his gratitude for each panelist sharing their journey, as well as all of you for being here to talk about such an important topic. Before I start asking questions, I would love it if each panelist could go down the line and say their name, role, where they work, and why they feel the topic of mental health and substance use recovery is important to speak about. Lydia, you want to start us?
Hi everybody, my name is Lydia Fuqua. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm coming to you from DECA. I'm a program manager in the Prevention Services program, so focusing on substance use prevention, low back harm reduction, and suicide prevention as well. Like many of us, I am not a person necessarily with lived experience, so I do want to say that. My family has been impacted by substance use disorder and mental health challenges, and so when I think about why this is important, I think about my loved ones and their journeys to find recovery and the barriers that they've encountered. And what I've come to understand is that they don't often hear that recovery is possible and likely with the right support and resources, and that's a crucial piece missing from the conversation, I think. And so I think these conversations are important to have to normalize help seeking and help us better understand as a community how we can come to support those who need that help to get them the help.
And I'm Lisa Russell. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer at Heartland Community Health Center. So I oversee all of our clinicians, either in primary care, pediatrics, and behavioral health. This is such an important topic to me as well. I echo what Lydia said, although I don't have lived experience with it. Many people in my family are mentally ill, they have substance use disorders, and I've seen how they've struggled, and I've seen the difference between when they're offered a chance for recovery and when they're not offered a chance for recovery. So the difference is so vast when you have those available resources and when you don't. And throughout my career, I've been so lucky to meet so many people who come in and before they came to us, they would feel really hopeless and they would feel like nobody cared about them. And it's wonderful to be able to help them through that journey and improve their mental well-being, help them recover. And just one of the greatest things in my job is to see somebody completely turn their life around and do well, and then pass that on and help others that have been in similar situations.
Hello, I'm Ashley Countryman. I'm the Director of Addiction Services at Bert Nash Mental Health Center, and I have about 20 years working working in substance use disorders. I previously worked at an all-men's facility, and then I worked at an all-women's facility, whether residential or outpatient or intensive outpatient. I'm very similar to what you guys said. I think the topic's so important because a lot of times, we focus on the illness, and to have an opportunity to focus on the recovery and to offer hope to people that this is absolutely possible. And everyone's recovery looks different. There's no one way to recover. It's a different journey for everyone. And just holding up that yes, it is possible with the right supports for you to recover.
I am Jessica Dibble. I work at Bert Nash as a peer support specialist, and I do have the lived experience, unlike these ladies. My family does struggle with alcoholism, but for me, it's so important because it's life or death for me. If I didn't choose recovery, I don't know that I'd be sitting here today. I have peace today because I did choose recovery. And I genuinely love what I do because I can give back to somebody else, because I can only keep giving back by giving it to somebody else and being that living example to share with somebody else that I truly understand what you're going through with mental health or substance use. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Casarona. I am the Supervisor of Peer Services for Heartland RADAC, and I supervise our peer support workers throughout the state of Kansas. For me, like Jessica, I too am in personal long-term recovery from substance use, mental illness, and incarceration. Life or death, absolutely. For me, having these conversations is important because I didn't come from the typical, stereotypical addicted family. You know, I came from a very wholesome, all-American family, I guess you could say. And I grew up in a family that had the normal mindset to addiction and mental illness. So if I were to open up about these demons that I was facing and this void I had inside of me, I would have been looked at as morally deficient rather than someone with a disease. And so that stigma kept me for many years from being open about the struggles I was having and being willing to talk about it, to seek help. And so having that understanding today allows me to see the importance of having those conversations and understanding that every person we see that's struggling is still someone's son, someone's father, someone's brother, best friend, whatever it may be. They're still humans and they have the right to recover. And to be able to give them the comfort to talk freely about it is the first pathway that they have to recover.
Thank you all so much. Before we move on to the questions, if you could move the mic in front of you just so everybody can hear your answers, because I know you guys all have meaningful things to say. So I will go ahead and start with a few questions and then I'll open it up to the audience. So Ashley, why do you believe counseling, support groups, or other treatments help a person who struggles with addiction?
Well, I think first and foremost, to offer structure. A lot of times with addiction, life is out of control. There is not a lot of structure. It's there's no bedtime. There's no early time to get up. There's no job maybe keeping some of that structure. So just to offer structure, and then having people together that are seeking the same thing, like whatever their recovery might be for them. It also goes back to hope, and what we were talking about earlier in their first answer is people are getting better, people do recover, and you're not alone. I think it can be very isolating to live with a substance use disorder, a mental health disorder, and so just to know you're not alone and that there are others out there that can help.
Awesome. Nick, could you talk about some of the misconceptions about recovery, please?
Absolutely. So for me, it's funny because I had no idea what recovery was, and the only thing I knew about recovery is what I had seen on TV or heard people talk about, that it's those 12-step people that sit in a circle and talk about their problems, and it's got to be kind of cult-like. I didn't have any idea what recovery was. And even when people asked me if I'd be interested in recovery, my mindset was that there's this one pathway to recovery. And that's such a misconception because recovery is a very broad term. Recovery to me may be completely different than recovery to Jessica, who is sitting here next to me talking about her own recovery, and our paths may be completely different. The beautiful thing about recovery is it can come in any form. It can come through connection to a local church. It can come from different connections throughout the community. There is, of course, the 12-step fellowships. There's Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery. But at the end of the day, recovery is about finding hope, finding purpose, and finding a connection to society again, whether that is through jobs, through just finding community support, whether it's an athletic club or a cornhole club, I don't care what it is, but having some type of connection to your community. As somebody that struggled for 30 years with addiction and mental illness, I always felt different. I always felt like I didn't belong, even in a room full of people. And, I think that we've learned through research that addiction is a lack of connection to society. We isolate, we become alone, we believe that we're terminally unique and our problems are different than everyone else out there, no one's ever going to understand. So for me, recovery is about starting with connecting to others that have walked in that path. That's why I personally think that peer work is one of the most critical pieces of the treatment continuum, because there's people like us that can meet that person day one that has zero hope, that is fighting their demons alone, is afraid to talk about it because they think no one will understand, and they can meet someone that can be a walking living example that recovery is possible.
Jessica, do you have anything to add?
Ditto. No, I mean, like him, I didn't have the resources either. I didn't know where to go. I just knew, and honestly, when I got clean, I didn't even know I wanted to be clean. The court system kind of was gonna force me to be clean. And so I thought I would take a leap and get better before I went to court so that it maybe would result in a better outcome, which did work in my favor. But yeah, I didn't have the resources. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? And so that's why peer work to me is so important, because it gives them that outlet. It gives them that person to connect to relate to, that's gone through a similar situation.
Wonderful. Lisa, could you talk about the steps that primary care providers can take to help patients navigate substance use?
So primary care is uniquely positioned to help people with substance use. A, because people typically present to their primary care provider first with their concerns. So oftentimes they're the first person that they let know of their problems. And secondly, hopefully people have a really good relationship with their primary care provider and they've known them for a while and they trust them. And when you're in that position of trust, the steps that you should take are A, assess the problem. Is this mild? Do they need encouragement? Is it really interfering with their life to the point that they need an urgent referral? Do they need to see a counselor right away? Do they need to see a psychiatrist? Do they need to be hospitalized? Is this something that they can use medication to help them with? And we also know that this works better when your medical provider, your psychiatrist, your counselor are all working together, and even better when they're under the same roof and where you can hand that person off to another specialist in the moment when you meet them and when they're ready to change. Because if you don't grab them when they're ready to change immediately, sometimes that's a big barrier. So primary care really needs to learn to assess and to make those connections to help people get the services they need.
Thank you. I mean, I have a full list of questions and I can probably talk all night, but I will open it up to the audience so that you guys have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand and Carrie will bring the mic to you. Go ahead and ask another one. Oh, perfect.
Okay, I don't like these things. Penny here, I'm with NAMI. Actually, almost 50 years of lived experience with the mental stuff and with drug addiction. So my question is, what do you see the future being in regards to how we can make peer support something that insurance companies take? Because especially as far as not everybody needs the therapy one-on-one, and not everybody needs the meds, because you can't always trust your doctors. Because when I got off the illegal drugs, they just put me on Oxy. So that didn't help anything. But the peer support thing, I've noticed a lot is working, especially within correctional facilities. So I'm wondering how that's gonna get expanded, because I wanna see an all men's groups, considering they're the highest suicide rate. So what you gonna do?
So I think it's safe to say that peer support is the hot topic in SUD and mental illness treatment across the country. I think that there's been endless amounts of research to support the efficacy of it now. And just in my time, which isn't a long time of being in this field, the evolution of the last 4 years has been amazing. I mean, my agency, and not to highlight my agency, but this is some of the work that is being done. We have peer support in 5 of the 7 prisons throughout the state of Kansas. We have peer support in the jails throughout multiple counties. We have peer support throughout the communities, the crisis centers, and the hospitals. I can say that one of the biggest changes for the state of Kansas that I think is huge is the Governor's Behavioral Health Planning Council that has been around for years. Finally, this year added a peer support subcommittee, which we just started this year. So that shows that the policymakers, the people with the big checkbooks to fund programs are now listening, and they're hearing, and they're seeing the importance of peer support. So I can say that, you know, one of the most mind-blowing changes recently was that KDOC reached out to us and have started a peer program with incarcerated individuals. So we actually have incarcerated individuals that are on life sentences or long-term sentences that are now being certified and serving as peers within the prison system. So I think it needs to go a lot farther, but the progress that has been made has been absolutely amazing.
I was gonna say, just how far it's come in my time. When I first started in this field, peer support, you know, like what is that? And just in our community within the last probably 8 years, how much it has just really expanded. And I think that, to echo what you said, just that we just need to keep going in that direction. And some insurance do pay for peer support, not all of them, and it does need to be expanded. But we're heading in the right direction.
Like any suggestions that people can do to add fuel to it? Like contacting people that, you know, like what action needs to be taken to make it a bigger thing. Because like, I have inmates who are worried about when they get out, there is no peer support specifically for incarcerated people with mental illness to help them not relapse. If they go in a regular peer support group, it ain't gonna work. People are going to look at them differently regardless. You know what I mean? So like I wanna know what you think needs to be done to get this like more recognized to where it actually doesn't take years. I mean, I've been waiting almost 50 years for this crap.
I think continuing to talk about it, continue to have these conversations, I think it's twofold. I think that, for one, individuals that are out there battling have no idea that peer support exists. That was in my case. I can speak to you after though. There are programs specifically for individuals coming out of prison. There's countless programs that I can help connect you with. So that lack of understanding. And so I think as society, it's educating society, politicians, the policymakers, all the way up the chain of the importance of it. And then for society to understand that service is available and have access to finding it.
I definitely think educating primary care providers on that is really important as well. In my experience, it's been so helpful when I've had somebody who wants to make that change. And if they're talking to somebody that doesn't have lived experience, sometimes they just don't make that connection, or they say, you don't know what I'm going through, forget about it, not today. But if I can bring a peer support person in the room, they're gonna talk to them and they're gonna trust what they have to say. And if that person can then drive them to a treatment facility, even better. And I don't think that a lot of primary care providers even know what a peer support person is. And they wouldn't know who to call and where to go or anything like that. So I think educating the medical community that this is a crucial part of linking people to care is the next step that we could take.
Thank you all. Okay. Any other audience questions?
So, my name is John. Just a quick question, and I'm sure you guys' opinion on this. How would you guys handle in mental health, like I guess the difference of different opinions or diagnoses you're talking to give you? For example, I've been seeing doctors for years, but and for years they told me that I had a mental diagnosis that I have to live with for the rest of my life. But as of lately, it's just like, it's been a term where they say I don't have a mental diagnosis, that they're wrong. And then just because one or two doctors say that they were wrong in the past, or I don't have them, all future doctors seem to agree, or they don't agree, and so it's a split. Like, you don't know who to believe.
It's a tough one. I guess the question I would ask myself is, what do I believe? What is true for me? And seeking, and I don't know if this is a possibility, but seeking out a different provider or seeking out a provider that actually like Lisa, who that those diagnoses are something that she works with, right, a lot of her day, I would assume, right? Which, like maybe a primary care doctor, that's not something they see every single day, right? They don't diagnose mental health. So I would look for a provider that's something that's in their wheelhouse.
I would definitely look for a provider that does not necessarily diagnose you the first day that they meet you, because they really shouldn't. There are some things that are clear and obvious, but some bipolar, schizophrenia, things like that, you really got to get to know somebody, know their entire history before you can truly diagnose them with that, which takes many sessions of meeting them. And the diagnostic criteria changes throughout the years, and people grow and they change, and something that you're diagnosed with as a child might turn out to not be true as an adult. And it is really hard when you have that in your chart as a label and go throughout your life and have people read that, because if clinicians aren't familiar with mental illness, they're just going to take the chart's word for it and go from there. So my advice would be trying to find somebody that you connect with, who will meet you many times before they tell you what their opinion is on what your diagnosis is.
Well, and I would say include you in like what you want to do about it, right? Like if you have this whatever, right? How do you want to treat it, if you want to treat it at all? And what does that look like for you?
I think one thing I'll add from a non-clinical perspective is someone with lived experience. One of the challenges for me was how I would be feeling when I'm sitting at home in my house at 2 o'clock in the morning alone might be completely different than how I'm feeling when I'm sitting in front of a doctor that's asking me questions. And so perhaps trying to journal when you are having these thoughts or feelings that you feel are disturbing or uncomfortable, and start journaling that. And don't give up on advocating for yourself. Don't give up on fighting for yourself. If it takes many different people, keep fighting, because you do deserve the right to recovery. And sometimes all they get is that 15 minutes, half hour, whatever it is sitting in front of you, and you may be struggling to really truly articulate those feelings and the things that you're going through the other 24 hours or 23 hours in the day. So collecting a journal of some of those thoughts and feelings as they change and evolve, because I know for me it was, all over the place depending on what day you asked me. So that might help you to better communicate what you're going through.
Thank you.
Thank you. While Carrie's walking over there, Lydia, I know you work on the prevention and harm reduction side of this work. What do you feel like are the most important and impactful things community members can do to help prevent or reduce substance use within our community?
It's a really good question. I think first and foremost, listen first. Start where folks are, and get to know each individual person. That's a good sort of foundation. I think the other thing that we can do, if you're in this room, it's likely that you're curious about or supportive of these topics. And so I think we are all, all ambassadors, right, to bust stigma and model behavior that normalizes help-seeking behaviors. So those are just kind of general things that we can do and encourage others to do. And then, think about how to learn how to recognize and respond to the signs of substance use disorder or mental health challenges. We are not clinicians. The everyday average layperson. There are clinicians on the stage. I am not one of them. I'm not trained to diagnose. That's not my role. I am trained to support and provide connection to help and hope, and that's something that everybody can be trained to do. And so that's what I would encourage, is seeking out opportunities to learn more about how to recognize and respond to signs of mental health challenges and substance use disorder, and know what's in our community and where to point people. You have a question, Kathy?
Yes. Hi, I'm Kat, and I wanted to touch back to the conversation we were having earlier with Lisa about training our primary care physicians or medical staff, and what programs or initiatives are currently ongoing, or are there grants out there that are being done to provide that training, not just to new medical staff, because I know old school doctors get into their habits and it's hard to learn new things. And approaching more from a stance of looking at it from the mental health with children. I know there's a severe lack of providers out there trained to do the diagnosis, and that's kind of a secondary question. What are we doing to attract more providers?
So I think, first and foremost, schooling has changed a little bit. Maybe not as much as it should, but I think that in medical schools and nursing schools, they are bringing more awareness to how much you will see mental illness in your practice. Whereas before, it was kind of that section of school that they would just touch on and say, unless you're going into psychiatry, be familiar with this, but it's not going to be a big part of your day. And so at the basic level, there's just a little bit more training going on saying you need to be able to recognize this and be able to know what to do when a patient comes to you. There are certainly some grants available. We actually just received a grant for substance use, which will pay for medications for patients, but also enhance some training opportunities. There's a lot of providers who really enjoy educating other providers and putting on talks and lectures and things like that as well, to kind of spread some information. Recently, actually, to renew your DEA license to prescribe controlled medications, you have to take a course on controlled meds, substance abuse, diversion, things like that. In order to prescribe Suboxone, you used to have to take a training course specifically to do this, and this has kind of replaced that. So whereas taking a training course in order to help people with substance use used to be optional, now if you want to prescribe, you've got to do it. So the government has taken some steps in order to at least expose clinicians to substance use treatment, to mental health treatment, things like that. So grants are a wonderful resource. Peer lectures, I think just starting at the basics and getting it into medical schools and nursing schools, and then at the highest level, the government saying, you gotta know about this if you want to prescribe controlled meds.
Wonderful.
Jessica, can you talk a little bit about your role at the Bert Nash Center and what it entails?
Sure. So basically, I have a caseload of clients who struggle with mental health or substance use, and I meet them where they're at. I meet them in their home. I meet them out in the community. I'm that lived experience to show that you can recover, and I always tell them when I'm a recovering addict, I don't hesitate to. I'm very open and upfront with them. I tell them when I struggle because I'm not bionic and don't have bad days, and that's beneficial for them because they realize that. Okay, I can get better, this is okay, you know what I mean? I help them pay their bills, I help them do a budget, I advocate for them at the doctor's office, because they get scared when they go to the doctor, not wanting to say certain things or illnesses or things that are hurting or whatever, and I can advocate and just be that support system for them at a time that they're vulnerable. And yeah, I just guide them along their journey. I don't do their journey for them. I don't make it up for them. They set their own goals and objectives, and then we work towards that goal. When we achieve it, we pick another one. They pick another one, and then we go for that. And then we just get out to the community and see things that they may not have seen. Or honestly, most of them don't even leave their home until I show up. They're literally stuck in their home for however many days until I show up and can take them out. Some of them I go to lunch with because they want to take that time to go have lunch at a restaurant, And so it's just being a productive member of society, and that's what I show them that they're capable of doing.
Thank you. Yes?
This is for Jessica or Nick. How do you, as a peer, how do you use your work as a peer in your own recovery for yourself? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So for me, I was actually just talking about this before we started, that when I became a peer and doing the work, it made me grow tenfold in my own recovery. It strengthened my own recovery because by the time I started the work, my actions meant something to me. I wanted my actions to match my words, whereas for 30 years in active addiction, I would tell you whatever I wanted you to hear to appease you in that moment. Whereas through recovery, I've taken pride in becoming a person who is accountable to my own words and my own actions. And so if I'm gonna sit in front of a client and have the opportunity to model recovery behavior, I wanna make sure that I am living and walking the same message that I'm preaching. And so it's allowed me the opportunity to better model recovery. And I think through doing that, it also demonstrates that we as people change. I've had the very fortunate miracle blessing to be able to be a peer to many people that I've known in my past life and my active addiction, whether it's walking into a prison to do a group or into a jail or into a treatment center or even meeting them in the community. And they get to see me today, and it's mind-blowing to them. They cannot believe that I'm the same person they knew just a short 6 years ago. And so that, to me, is one of the biggest blessings and gifts of my recovery. And so it's an honor to me to be able to live and walk and demonstrate what recovery means to me. And that means being a productive member of society. It means being an amazing father, a husband, an accountable employee, recent graduate from college. And so these things that I've got to do as a result of recovery are what's kept me going, and I want them to be able to see that through action.
So kind of like Nick, I never thought that I would be one, a peer support, or two, in recovery from active addiction. And so, I mean, to kind of mimic what he said, like, I do it in my home life, I do it, you know what I mean? I just have care for others, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a supplement for like the NA meetings that I attend, because it can't be, because that's a different type of healing for me. But I'm an honest person today in everything that I do, because I hold myself like at a higher standard, even when I don't think I'm capable. Like, I didn't think I could sit up here in front of you guys and talk, like I was so nervous, but here I am. So, but I also never thought I could get clean, you know what I mean? Like, I thought I would die a drug addict, you know, I never thought that I would ever, you know, have a productive life. And so, yeah, I strive every day to be a better person than I was yesterday, you know what I mean? Whether that's at home, I'm a mom, I'm a grandma actually, so like, to be a part of that, and to demonstrate what it is to be that is what I do every single day. In work, out of work, it doesn't matter.
I was just wondering how many organizations in Lawrence offer peer support and the best way for somebody who would benefit from those services to get linked to them.
I don't have an exact number for how many agencies, but so I'm jumping on this one just because I live in Shawnee County. And I originally started my work in Shawnee County. When I became a supervisor, Douglas County fell under my supervision. And I am absolutely blown away at how far ahead Douglas County is to every other county in the state that I work with. I mean, it is mind-blowing. We have here what's called the Peer Fellowship, which is funded through county dollars. And it is a training ground, if you will, for peers. It is a group of peers throughout multiple different agencies that meet once a week, and they have extensive training sessions that they go through for 3 hours every Wednesday to help develop the peer workforce in Douglas County. And that's solely funded through the county dollars. And so not only does it give them the ability to develop professionally, but it gives them the ability to build those collaborative relationships. And it's, you know, we've got multiple agencies sitting at the table and we all work together on a regular basis. It's nothing for my agency to pick up the phone and call Ashley and say, hey, we've got this guy. We need to get together and we need to talk about what we can do as a community to help this client. And so as far as I know, there's, do you know the exact number?
I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you the different agencies in it. DECA has peers, Bert Nash has peers, Heartland, RADAC has peers, Family Promise has peers, the Housing Authority had peers.
We have consumer rate organizations.
Yes, they have peers. And I would say, these are your tax dollars at work, right? So, I don't know why 8 years sticks in my head, but eight years ago, some of those behavioral health dollars, we created the Peer Fellows program where they bring people together to learn about peer support. And that's one of the things I do. Once a month, I am a peer coach, and we do peer coaching with the different coaches that are placed at different agencies. And it just like you, Douglas County is way ahead of the game as far as peer work in our county. We're very fortunate that we live in a community that's willing to support that type of work and educating people to do this work because it is so important. I told Jeff, I love working with peers. And part of that is because they never saw themselves in this place, right? And they're just so excited to do the work. And whatever I can do to help support that, I'm absolutely going to support that because I have seen the miracle of peer support.
This question isn't directed at any one person. So I know what programs are available for adults struggling with SUD, but what programs help our youth?
Well, speaking of getting a grant, Bert Nash recently secured a grant to start an adolescent and transitional age youth SUD program or a dual diagnosis program, and we'll take our first clients in January for that. And during the meantime, we're doing a lot of planning and a lot of training around getting that up and running. And part of that that's going to be integral to that is parent support, peer support, family education, and along with treatment for the youth. It is a family disease, and it's so important that we involve the family and the family in the healing. So that's one place, but there is only one in all of Kansas. There's only one residential adolescent treatment program in the whole state, and that's in Johnson County. So we can do better. We can do better.
Thank you.
Heartland does offer substance use treatment for adolescents as well, mostly in the form of our licensed clinical social workers at both our pain and pediatrics location and our family medicine location. We do also prescribe medications for adolescents who need it for opioid or alcohol use disorder.
I could share a little bit about moving a little upstream prevention approaches for youth that are happening in Douglas County. One piece that I can speak about are what's called our Youth Empowerment and Prevention chapters, or YEP chapters. Currently we have 8 chapters in Douglas County schools, middle and high school, and these are youth who join and participate in these chapters, and it's all designed to build connectedness and promote things that protect young people. So they receive training around substance use and mental health, and it's peer-led, so they act as ambassadors for the rest of the student body by developing projects and activities to get the rest of the students involved in the conversation. And that is funded by county dollars as well. It's a pretty new program. It's been around just since like 2020, and it's continuing to grow. But that is one way we're trying to move a little upstream and develop, some connectedness within the school and within the community to protect them and teach them about some of these things.
I think so. And this isn't just specific to Lisa, but I know that your organization has been doing the MAT probably, maybe the longest, maybe DECA, I'm not sure, but I know with Dr. Strickland, you guys really took off on that early on. Can you talk to us about the MAT? Why is it important to offer that kind of treatment for individuals who need that when previously we said, just cut it out, good luck?
Yeah, I think that the mindset, thankfully, has changed in the past few years, because you're right, it used to be, even when I started, that if you have a problem, you need counsel, you need psychiatry, and that's it. And we kind of touched on it's a moral failure, so to speak, and so unfortunately, a lot of clinicians still have that mindset. They'd say, well, you just need to quit. This isn't a disease, this is your choice. And that has changed so much. And so now clinicians more than ever have that mindset of, why would we ever tell a person with high blood pressure you don't need your medication, you just need to eat better and you need to lose weight. Is that part of it? Sure. But we would never take their medication away from them or not encourage them, because we know that that's gonna save their life and prevent, bad outcomes down the road. And we know that that's the same thing too with substance use, is some people cannot quit using without the help of medications. They really cannot. It's just, it has such a grip on them, and their brain is wired that there's no other way that they can do it. And so it's so great that we have those medications available, and they're not for everybody. Some people don't want them, some people do. And I have definitely seen people change their lives and some save their lives by having medications available to help them quit using.
Hello, just to go back to the conversation about prevention, and you all might have something to say about this, especially peers, but what do you think are some of the things that are preventing people from this connection in the first place? Like, I've heard that a lot from all of you. And I mean, what are some community patterns that you see in our community or just throughout the nation about what's preventing connection to people or community or whatever?
I mean, for me, it was the stigma of it. I hung around the same people, just like myself, and so I didn't really know what was normal, whatever that might be, but I didn't know what that was, and I didn't know where to go. And I don't know, I just was oblivious to it. I didn't know where to start, I didn't know where to stop. And I got so familiarized and so used to using, but that was all I knew. I never really woke up, I never really went to bed, but if I did, in between that time, all I did was chase drugs to try to chase the high, you know what I mean? And so I didn't have a peer, right? And so had I had the resources or somebody to guide me, I think I don't know that it would have lasted as long as it did, from 15 until 35.
Were there other things you were interested in previously prior to using that you just couldn't?
Yeah, so I had somewhat of a normal life before. I mean, I was married, I had a kid, I had a job, whatever. And then but I never knew how to get back to that. I knew that it was possible, but I didn't know how to get back to that because I was so fogged over, my mind was so fogged over from using drugs that that's what I came accustomed to. I didn't know any different at that point. It was fight or flight for me, survival mode at that point,
So what I think is amazing about that question is it's so different. It's such a broad answer for everyone. And here's two people who have recovered in the same community, didn't know each other at all prior to, and we met through recovery. Very similar journey, but very different. But it was stigma that kept us both away. For me, I had a very supportive, loving family. My father, at the time that I ended up all over the television for a federal indictment, he was the deputy commissioner of the juvenile justice system in Kansas and had no idea that I was as bad as I was under his own roof. But I would have never told him because of the stigma that held me back. But for me, it was, I grew up an athlete, I grew up a popular kid, I had lots of friends, I have friends that went on to do great things, all my siblings went on to do great things. I had an accident, broke my neck. This was in 1994. They didn't know what they know now about the opiates, and so it started there. But the important part of it for me is that the more I went down that rabbit hole to where now I'm chemically dependent. So to the MAT question, I wanted to stop more than anyone would have ever imagined. And there was no one beating the hell out of me more than I was beating the hell out of myself. The shame and guilt of the skeletons that were inside of me kept me from wanting or believing that I could do anything else. So the more that deepened inside of me and that void grew, the further I disconnected from those healthy supports and started navigating to the people that I felt comfortable around and for the people that were no good for me, the ones that were living the life that I was living because I felt so low about myself. But ultimately, I could never talk openly and comfortably about it because how would all of my coworkers think if I told them that when they went home to their families and after happy hour, a few happy hour drinks, I was going home and doing God only knows what behind closed doors. I would have lost my job, lost my career, and lost everything that I was still clinging to. The one thing that had any meaning left in my life would have gone like that. My family thought that if you have an addiction, get over it, quit doing it. Quit doing dumb stuff if you don't want dumb consequences. If I'm depressed, well, get over it. Everybody has a tough life. And so those are the messages that I heard and that I embedded and became internalized at a very young age. So as these demons were progressing, how could I possibly turn to anyone? The only people that could relate to me were the ones that were bad influences.
So I have two questions. That's okay. One is, what are some of the harm reduction strategies that we use in Lawrence and Douglas County? And two, it's based on Nick's answer, part of that, like the fear of opening up the demons that are inside. Like, we are starting to hear, in other parts of the country or in different, universities, we're starting to hear about the use of psychedelics to help treat with SUD and mental health issues. Is there any movement towards any of that happening here in Kansas?
No, not for a long time.
Well, I would say on a provider level, understanding that people don't just quit overnight. And so understanding that there can be relapses, and that's part of the process, and that you don't lose everything you learn just because you relapse, right? And understanding it's zero use, but being open to the fact that it is their journey, right? It's their journey to figure out how they want to quit, right? And supporting them and not shaming them and being open to alternatives. I also think that, and Doc knows that, there's some legislation that needs to happen because it's just illegal. It's illegal to do needle exchanges in Kansas. It's illegal there's certain things that are just illegal and that you cannot do here. So legislation-wise, we need to be changing some of that so that we can offer more harm reduction. The other thing is some of the funding is tied to the zero use, right? That's the ultimate outcome is to quit using altogether, and that some of the dollars are tied to that as far as treatment.
I think we have come a long way though, as far as harm reduction. DECA doesn't let anyone go without Narcan. Anywhere, you can get Narcan anywhere now. That wasn't even heard of when I was still using, and that wasn't that long ago. I didn't even know what Narcan is. I overdosed multiple times, and thank God I got to the hospital quick enough to take whatever measures they did then, but it wasn't Narcan. Today, between just the agency sitting at this table, if anyone in Douglas County needed Narcan, we could get it to them, and that's huge. I've heard talks about Narcan vending machines starting in Douglas County.
Yeah.
Again, light years ahead of any other county in the state of Kansas. And we, passed the fentanyl test strips, got passed this year so that we're able to distribute fentanyl test strips. But at the end of the day, there's still a long way to go from a legislative standpoint.
Lydia, could you talk a little bit about the Narcan training?
Sure, yes.
What Narcan is too,
Yeah, absolutely. So naloxone or Narcan is the brand name, is an opioid overdose reversal drug. DECA currently has a contract with the state of Kansas to provide anybody a kit that needs one free of charge, and it's a nasal spray. So anybody can go onto our website and request it. We also have received some Douglas County dollars to be able to get naloxone specifically for Douglas County, which includes a naloxone vending machine. It's coming soon. I believe it's ordered, it's on its way. We're supposed to have it set at the end of the month, location TBD. So be on the lookout for that information. But we're also putting up, in Lawrence specifically, what are called one-box devices. So those are devices that contain a kit, a naloxone kit, which contains 2 doses of naloxone, as well as PPE, and then a video for how to administer naloxone. So anybody who might encounter an overdose can go and grab that box and open it up and watch this quick video to understand how to administer naloxone. So those are a couple opioid specific harm reduction strategies that we're working on at DECA. We also offer naloxone. We call it naloxone training, but it's overdose response training. And we offer that. There's a virtual self-paced option that folks can go through. It's free. You can sign up for a general audience monthly webinar that's free, or you can request us to come out to you and provide you that training in person or virtually. We're happy to do that, and all of that's free. And we just received some money from the state of Kansas as well to provide fentanyl test strips, so that is coming too. I will say big one. The supply that we start with, the funding that we receive for the amount is small. So check our website early and often and get your order in so everybody can carry those. But we hope that this is the start of something bigger and more dollars to get more resources into the hands of folks who need it.
And along the lines of MAT as well, you'll have a patient who perhaps is using a variety of substances, opioids being one of them. And if they're willing to take Suboxone, they might still be using other things, but if they're no longer injecting heroin, the risk for overdose goes way down. The risk for acquiring HIV and hepatitis C goes way down. So, we'll never not give that to them and say, sorry, you've got to quit everything or you're not getting this. But if we can reduce one substance they're using and reduce the spread of illness, then that's wonderful.
And I will say I've taken that training, and it is a very wonderful and educational training, so I highly recommend that everybody take that. So Ashley, you kind of touched on this, but this question is for everybody. While this topic is usually centered on the individual seeking care, can you speak about the impact the journey can have on the partner, spouse, or caregiver?
I can. So my partner at the time had actually gotten clean. It was the one person that I had left in my life that I thought would never leave me and was going to leave me because he was going to relapse if I didn't get clean. My family, on the other hand, like I said, alcoholism ran in my family, but they had no idea. When I was actually in treatment, I had to write a letter goodbye letter to my drug of choice. And I was an IV user. And in the letter, I said goodbye sore arms, and my mom looked at me like, what? She had no idea. And so I have educated my family on drug use. I've educated them on the science. I've educated them on so much of what I've been through, what I've witnessed in peer support, my time at DECA or now my time at Bert Nash. And so I think it's because honestly, I was having a great time. Not gonna lie, until the very end, and it was really rough, right? It became not fun after a while, but I was having a great time, and everyone that loved me was suffering. They were watching me basically diminish away and, become somebody I wasn't meant to, that they didn't raise me to be or whatever. And so I felt like my mom had, it was a lot harder for them than it was for me. The phone call, is it a good phone call, is it a bad phone call, things like that. And so, I think it was harder for my family than it was for me because I was having a good time.
I don't remember the last time I had a good time with it, so I can't say that, but I can say that honestly, today, without a doubt in my mind, I can safely say the biggest lie I ever told myself was I'm only hurting myself. I believe that wholeheartedly. For many, many years, that was my rationalization, that it's only hurting me. The impact it had on my family once I became clear-headed, and this was probably one of the first realizations after sitting in jail for maybe 30 days after they quit bailing me out, the multiple times they bailed me out. And me, in that moment, pissed off. Why don't they get me out this time? Why are they not answering my calls? And why am I eating the jail food and not the ramen noodles I'm getting on commissary? How dare they? That was really my mindset at the time. And when they finally cut me off, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was the hardest thing. To this day, my mother struggles with it. She still questions countless times of what did she do wrong? Did she cut me off? Did she enable me? The mental warfare that it put my family through it still hurts today. My father had extreme health issues because of the anxiety and the stress that he had, wondering if his baby son was gonna end up dead or in prison. My brother ended up in a divorce because of his wife being so upset with him continuing to bail me out. My mother, terrible health problems. And I mean, it didn't just take them away from me, it took them away from each other, because every single person in the family had a different opinion and a different view about what Nick needed. And ultimately, what Nick needed was to make the decision that I needed to do something. Today, what's amazing is the ripple effect that it's had the opposite way. It's had such an amazing impact on my family. The family that was dead set on the moral mindset of mental illness and addiction being a moral deficiency now truly believes that and understands that it is a disease. So they've been able to help countless people. I've been able to count, I can't count the number of friends have reached out because their child or their brother or their sister or other people in my family, cousins, people I never even associated with, constantly reaching out for guidance and for help. And that's where the peer role comes in. I can share my experience. That's all I have is my experience. But it's been amazing to see how that one little pebble caused such a ripple in a negative way. But today, because of recovery, it's had a way bigger reach and a way bigger impact on my family and those that they're connected to.
Nick, but everybody, could you talk about the signs and symptoms of substance use that friends or loved ones can look for?
I kind of laughed when you told me that was my question, because I'm like, man, I don't even know where to begin because it is so different. I'm not laughing because it's funny, I'm laughing because, man, for me, it was very subtle in the beginning. It was lost. Somebody asked, did you have things you were interested in? I was so passionate about sports, about hanging out with family, going fishing, going hunting, always doing stuff with family, and slowly I wasn't doing that anymore. That's the beginning, is when now all of a sudden I stayed at the family functions a little bit less time. I didn't want to quite hang out. I was always, the bigger signs were when my mood became like this. I had no affect at all. I was never happy, I was never sad because I didn't want to see the hurt, and so I was just flat. The more severe as it progressed, then it was the obvious, the manipulation, the constantly, oh, me, the world is against me, everything is happening to me. It's not me, but it's, the world against me. Then it was the money issues, then it was losing the job, then it was losing the relationships, and then it became the more severe things of not coming home for weeks at a time, or not showing up for any holidays, not being there when my father's having surgery because he has cancer, and these things that I never would have missed in my life were no longer important in their eyes. They were very important, I just couldn't be there. As far as the physical behaviors, I would say the 50-pound weight drop in a matter of months was a pretty good indicator. The lack of hygiene, I went from being a pretty self-conscious person that always kept my image one way, and now my teeth are missing. I didn't always have these are gifts of recovery. The lisp is a gift of recovery, just so you know. But, those obvious signs were, now this guy that has a college degree, had all these things in life, isn't even showering for weeks at a time. And not caring about it, not getting a haircut, not shaving, just those obvious physical signs, but then it became the more severe, concerning ones of, I heard Jessica say, wearing sweatshirts in the middle of winter. Or on the opposite side of it, being running around in the middle of winter with a tank top on and snow, sweating bullets. It was the erratic behavior and the erratic changes. I could go from cowboy boots and a cowboy hat one week to a Grateful Dead t-shirt and Birkenstocks the next week. Because part of that addiction and that lack of connection, I would evolve daily. I became a chameleon so that I could feel comfortable around whoever was in front of me.
Not for you. No, I'm good. No, for me, it was basically everything he just said. Isolation was a big one for me. I spent a lot of time in the bathroom, not being around people, like my family or whatever. The lying, the cheating, the stealing. Wearing a sweatshirt in the middle of the summer. I was the one that wore like 5 pairs of pants to make myself look bigger because I weighed like 98 pounds when I stopped using. Yeah, and just like the behaviors, you know, not showing up for functions, not showing up for your kids' events, not going to your aunt's funeral, you know what I mean? Things like that that you would have normally been to. Yeah.
One of the things that I would recommend if you're interested in learning more about signs and symptoms and how to support somebody is to take a mental health first aid class. Bert Nash offers some, DECA offers some. They have courses focused for supporting other adults. They have courses for supporting young people, and it's just a really great way to look at how to be more mindful and more in tune with the people around you and how to support them if need be.
There are some flyers on mental health first aid on that back table if anybody's interested.
We planned that.
Hi, I had a question about relapse and how you might speak to someone or go about handling a person who is struggling or has relapsed but not necessarily fallen into the state of what they used to be, and what that, you know, there's a lot of things that might go on with that person in terms of, I just lost all of those years or months or what have you. So what is the mentality in terms of recovery, and you know, what stages or discussions you have with people to help them through that?
Well, I would normalize it. Like, if you think of any change that you've ever made in your life, did you start and then like never go a little backwards, right? Like, it is normal. It is part of the process. It can be part of the process, and you do not lose all your knowledge because you picked up that one time, right? And so how can I support you, the person that has relapsed, to get back to what you need to be doing, like, or what were you not doing, what could you be doing, what happened, talking to peer support, that it is part of the process, and not shame people for relapsing.
Yeah, I think this might be an unpopular answer for some people, but it's a realistic one, so I'm going to say it anyway. If you have someone, a loved one that's been highly involved with like 12-step fellowship recovery and they relapse, it is that much more critical that you as a family member, loved one, are close enough support, because one of the, you know, we have stigma within the 12-step community, and it's a real thing, and it's the sad reality of the, not all places, but of some recovery mentality is you relapsed, you failed. Relapse doesn't have to be a part of recovery, and these things that we hear, but it is very much a part of addiction. It's very much a part of the disease. And so that shame and guilt that keeps us away from seeking recovery for so long is tenfold when there's a lapse or a relapse involved. And I truly believe there is a definite difference between a lapse and a relapse. And people will lapse, they will stumble. They don't have to, but it happens very, very frequently. And it is that much more important to be wrapped up in love and care and support and non-judgment at that moment, so that they can't bounce back and not evolve into a full relapse.
I don't want to speak out of line or anything, but personally, I've had a lot of experience with relapse, and it was with alcohol. And I will tell you that the first time I relapsed, it wasn't a big deal. You know, it was a big deal because I let the relapse keep going. But it's the more relapses you have, the worse it is. It is just, I would say that, you know, the third time I relapsed, which was the last time, ended up with me just staring at that yellow road in the back of my truck from my balcony. You know, it wasn't fun anymore, but you had to have it. And AA was always there for me. There were a lot of people that supported me and tried to help me, but a lot of people in AA, I'm sorry, it's this belief that you're the one that has to decide that you need to help. nobody's gonna come for me. It's, you're gonna figure it out, and I did, but it was rough.
I think another important thing that needs to be said when we're talking about relapse in today's world, that I don't have the scientific data, but I know that it's there to support this statement. One of the number one high risk times for overdose are people that relapse, because they go right back to the same level of use that they did before they stopped, and that can be fatal, and that one slip can be fatal. And I know we've all seen it too many times with people that we love and care about. And so if you do have a family member, loved one, someone you know that has experienced a lapse, it is very critical to be aware of that and make sure that you do have Narcan and understanding, and the people that they're running around with have Narcan, because it's a very high risk moment for relapse or period.
Thank you. Jessica, but also Nick, if you'd like to. When you were starting your recovery journey, what are some things that you would have wanted substance use and or mental health professionals to know?
Honestly, I wanted to know that they were there, because I didn't have any resources. I didn't know where to turn or where to go. If I would have had, like, I called RADAC for my RADAC assessment, and that's how I went to treatment. And if I would have had peer support, I think it would have been very beneficial for me. I had a client recently tell me that she struggles with alcohol. She was sitting in front of a liquor store, staring at the door, wanting to go in, and I was about to celebrate my 7 years clean, and all she could think about was me. And that's why I do what I do today. So if I would have had, she thought if Jessica can do it, so can I. And so if I would have had somebody there to walk alongside me, even hold my hand sometimes, help me up sometimes when I can't get up, I think it would have benefited me more. It would have made me, I think I would have had better hope for myself in the beginning, instead of just saying, oh, I'm just doing this because I have to. I don't have a problem, you have a problem. You know, I think it would have helped me like tremendously. But like I tell any doctor I see, dentist I see, any professional I see, that I'm a recovering addict. So that they know, like I've almost went to the extreme of telling them I'm allergic to opiates because I don't want the opiates. You know what I mean? Just because I want them aware that I'm very, that I value my recovery. I recently got my head like cut open and had to get stitches, and
It wasn't. It was terrible.
And so I had worked at DECA and I was in ER, and they respected my recovery and where I was at in my recovery, and they respected me. And when I asked for something for the pain, because I genuinely wanted pain medication because my eyelids were beating with my heartbeat, they brought me to Tylenol. And I didn't want it to get high, I wanted it to not be in pain. And I think that's kind of like a thing too, like, I don't know, because like, just because I'm an addict in recovery doesn't mean I need to be in pain. Doesn't mean I need to suffer due to the fact that opioids is one of my drug choice. So yeah.
So, was the question on what I would want the counselors to know about me?
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, on the SUD side, I am so blessed that as weird as it sounds, was in the federal system, so the counselor that was assigned was the only one that dealt with people like me apparently, and she was amazing. What stuck out to me the most was I was 41 years old. I had given up on everything in life of ever having purpose, meaning, anything. I remember sitting in jail the last time, and I went to one 12-step meeting, and I heard everyone sharing. And I remember sitting back there thinking, damn, I'm old, first of all. And I'm hearing all these people talk about they wish they could get their kids back, and this, and their wife doesn't leave them, and all these things, these stories that I was hearing going around the room. And I remember sitting there thinking, you know, it was such a lonely, hopeless feeling of, damn, they want their kids back. I'm never going to get to be a father. I'm never going to even know what it's like to have a healthy marriage. I'm never going to get to have a career again that has meaning. I threw away the one college degree I have, and it was a business degree, and I could care less about ever going in that work again. So I'm never going to have something that has purpose and meaning to me. And so these are those internalizing thoughts that I had, that even day one in the treatment program, I was still eliminating myself and separating myself. And we call it terminal uniqueness, that, yeah, this is great for all you guys, but it's not gonna work for me. It's already too late. And I will never forget that counselor. Because after the clinical process of doing the intake and asking those clinical questions, then we went almost 2 weeks without having any conversation at all that had anything to do with my substance use. She was genuinely concerned and curious. Someone talked about being curious. She had the most non-judgmental stance and a genuine curiosity about me as a person and what was important to me. That is all she wanted to know. She didn't want to talk about why you won't become a father, or why you can't have a career, or why you have this mountain of legal troubles ahead of you. She didn't want to talk about any of that. She wanted to talk about what was important to me. And then she wanted to talk about things that I'd done in my life that were important and that I was successful at, in my opinion. So she was getting down to me for the first time in probably 25 to 30 years, looking back at life and saying that, man, I really do have a lot of strengths. I really was able to do some things in my life and even tie these things back to these strengths becoming assets, even in my active addiction, that helped me to survive. I had just been devoting all these strengths to the wrong things. And so now today I know it as a classic strengths-based approach, where she was getting me to return to the acceptance that I'm a good person, I deserve recovery, and I have what it takes to do it, because I'd given up that years before. And so in my work, that has always stuck with me. And although one of the primary goals for a lot of clients is to get clean or get sober, I never start with that. I want to know what's important to them, because they showed up for a reason. All of our services are voluntary. Even if you're told by your probation officer or your corrections person that you have to go to services, you still have freedom of choice. You may not be willing to take the consequences that come with choosing not to, but there is not a treatment center that I know of that has locked doors and aren't going to let you walk out the door if you decide to do that. And so for me, that stuck with me. It was important to approach every client with genuine curiosity. What is important to you? What made you show up today? And what do you want in life? What do you want to make it? And let me help you get it. And so focusing on those strengths, it really brought me back to a point in my life where I was proud of myself. I had forgotten about that years before that. And so I'm happy to say that that counselor opening up that idea to me and then being connected to a peer that showed me, hey, you can do it. Today I can say I got to become a father to a son, a father to 4 bonus kids whose father is not, well, was not able to be in their life because of active addiction, but another blessing. I was able to be healthy enough in my marriage and comfortable enough in my marriage to reach out my open arms to those kids' father when he decided he was ready. And now invite him in my home and teach him how to co-parent and to be present in his kid's life. I got to become a college graduate and a licensed addiction counselor. I got to have a career that is beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of, all because this counselor gave me that, the first person in probably 10 years that didn't make me feel judged sitting across from them.
Thank you so much. Do we have any last, oh, yes.
This kind of goes back to my last question, but when somebody is ready to make those steps, what does it look like when they go somewhere and they want to be connected to a peer support worker? If they have to go to Bert and Nash first and do like an intake for services or DECA, and how do they get connected to somebody that they can work with that peer relationship? Like one example that I have is I work real briefly answering calls for the Willow. And I will get calls a lot where it might not be domestic violence that's the primary thing going on in a home. And it will be one part of the relationship who wants to get sober, and they might just be a couple days or a week sober and our partner's still using. And it would just be, helpful in those situations to navigate them, to kind of let them know what to expect if they want to seek out a peer support worker or recovery services.
So I think, to tell the people that call, I mean, honestly, like a 12-step meeting, I think would be a good place to start. Obviously, you can go to Bert Nash, and you do have to go through an intake. Peer support is not a standalone service at Bert Nash, so you have to have like med services, therapy services, something of that nature to be able to be approved to have a peer. But yeah, I mean, I would say a 12-step meeting, whichever one that they feel comfortable in, if it's like female, getting connected to the women in the community, because even though they don't know their peers, they really are peers, like, and that's another benefit is, you know, being of service to other women and being able to help them, and for him, it's men. But yeah, I mean, just because to be able to get like a peer support, it is a process, you know, it's something that you have to navigate. There are waiting lists, there are things that, you know, you have to go through. But I would say a 12-step meeting would be like a great, and I can send you the meeting list, I don't know, or give you some or whatever for NA to hand out. And if they go to a meeting, they can get a phone list of like all the women or men or whatever in the meeting. And I know the phone weighs 5,000 pounds, but it really is beneficial to pick it up and connect with somebody in the meeting and get their phone number and then call them that way until they can get the services to get their support.
And yeah, I'm glad you said that about 12-step, because that's something that I think, as we're talking so much about peer support being this new great model, it's been around since like 1934, I think, when AA first came about, is sponsorship. And so that's it's not connected to the services, but a way for them to get connected. One thing kind of ties back to where we're going with peer support and what can be done to expand it. Traditionally, our peer support has always been a service, as Jessica talked about, that isn't standalone. And our recent funding for this funding grant year through Douglas County has allowed us to do a peer-first approach, which is peer only. And so, ironically, we talked about Willow. I had an appointment there today, but it got canceled because someone there was sick. So that's something I love about Douglas County. The collaborative effort amongst all of our agencies is phenomenal. So I would encourage them just to start calling, because I don't know what their policies are. I don't know what Bert Nash's are. I know what ours are, but everyone's different. And we have the ability today, as long as we have the bandwidth and caseloads aren't crazy, to sign people up just for peer services. And it's also becoming a new pathway for higher levels of service. Someone might not be comfortable with the systems of care yet. They might have tried treatment 3 times and it didn't work because it was the treatment, not them. Or, you know, they might have tried 12-step and it didn't work, or they weren't comfortable. But they're willing to talk to a peer, and then through building that trust and, you know, rapport with that peer, they may start becoming more open-minded to higher levels of care, in which case we would refer them to care coordination or an assessment for treatment and send them off to DECA or one of the other places. So have them call.
And that's something that peer support, like at least I can do. I can go to a meeting with them until they get comfortable enough to go on their own. I usually only go to NA, but I can go to AA, I can go to Smart Recovery. I mean, I can do any of them. It's whatever they want to do. So that's always an option once they get peer support, to like get them more familiarized with the meetings, you know, and stuff like that. So.
Danny, did you have a question?
It was basically that question, yeah.
So I was trained as a mental health therapist many decades ago, and our training, while it covered, of course, mental health and had some about substance use, but when you went into the world of work, you didn't get to work in both. It was one or the other. What disservice did we do to folks, and why is it important that we're talking about the combination of treating people with mental health and substance use together at the same time?
It's all mental health. I mean, so we do, we have done a disservice because people aren't all one thing, right? And it all kind of mixes together, and you have to tease it apart. And today we may be looking at the SUD symptoms, and tomorrow we may be looking at the mental health symptoms, and what do you want to do about it? But also, traditionally in Kansas, I can't speak for other states, the funding is separated. The regulations are separated, and I think as we know more and do better, right, we're trying to combine those things because people aren't all one thing, and you have to treat the whole person. It's the whole person.
I saw some statistics recently that said 1/4 of people who have a diagnosis of mental illness also have comorbid substance use disorder.
50% of people who have substance use disorder also have a mental illness diagnosis, which I think is really low, because it's gotta be more than that. I've met very, very few people in my career who only have addiction and truly maybe don't have anything else going on, but we know that people use substances to self-medicate. So you truly cannot, should not separate the two, because you have to treat mental illness alongside of treating substance use.
I mean, for me, I had at different points in my journey went and talked to somebody about my substance use, but I didn't talk to them about the other stuff because all they were concerned about is the substance use. I didn't ever talk about this accident that I went through that caused me to break my neck and at 18 years old lose every bit of identity that I had and the trauma that came with that. And so it's funny, it's the chicken or the egg. I mean, which came first? I have no idea, and I probably will never know. But I have yet to meet anyone in my personal life, in my life in addiction, that didn't have some type of mental illness that went with the addiction, whether it was medicated or induced, substance induced, or mental illness that was being self-medicated. They came together. And the other aspect that I think often goes untalked about, but we have seen a drastic shift in the way that we're providing services, is the trauma-informed approach. I will say, till the day I die, that my drug of choice was trauma. That was my gateway. That trauma was the gateway that led to every other thing. I could never identify a specific substance as my drug of choice. It was making this unresolved trauma go away was my thing of choice. So whatever took that away for that moment or that day or that hour or that 5 minutes, that's what I was gonna do. And so until I had a treatment team that was able to address the trauma, the mental illness, and the substance use in tandem, I don't think I ever would have gained recovery. But I also think that's the greatest thing about, again, the collaborative work that we all do is we know our lane and we know when we need to bring others in, and we have the resources and the connections within the community to reach out and bring other people in. And with the evolution of the CCBHCs and the community health centers being able to do more under one roof, it makes it that much easier. Because for me, if I would have had to go here to be treated for this, and then make another appointment and go over here in town to do this, I was lucky to be able to find a ride to get to one, let alone stay sober long enough to walk through that door. So what's the likelihood of me going to this person and this person on top of having to go see a PO and all the other obligations that I had to even start a journey of recovery? The collaborative effort to treat the whole person has come a long way, but that's the important piece.
I have a question about funding.
One second.
I have a question about funding. Say someone walks, off the street and comes to you, has no insurance, nothing. How do you go about deciding how long you're going to support that person? Because I work with a organization, Shepherd's Crossing, I don't know if you've heard of it. They have limited resources. So someone who comes in off the street, they're given help once a month for whatever they need. And then they're left on their own to figure out where other utilities or whatever they need funding for has to come from. So how do you decide? I keep hearing you say your community dollars or county dollars. I mean, that also has a limit. So how do you decide when this person has to go somewhere else or figure out a different way of getting support?
Well, I think it starts with what's clinically appropriate and what the person's willing to do. So I might think that they could be successful at whatever level of care, but they're not willing to do it, then that's not where we're gonna start. But in Kansas, there are federal dollars mixed with state dollars that support treatment for people who are 200% and below the poverty level, have no other insurance, and are a resident of Kansas. They can get treatment for free as long as it's clinically appropriate for them to do that. So it's really how long, that's dependent on where they are and their particular goals and what they want to achieve. Medicaid also pays for treatment. And then I know there are, like for uninsured people, there are other pots of money that can help support that person in our county. But there's never enough, right? But there are some opportunities to help people who don't have insurance.
And I will say the Bert Nash Center will not turn away an individual because of their inability to pay. We have something called the Nash Cares Fund that helps underinsured or uninsured individuals seek support and help with their bill because we don't want anybody to go without service. I think with that, if we don't have any other questions. Okay. 1 second.
I'm sorry. I'm not from Lawrence, but you guys sounds like a hybrid. The way you guys have come together, all different programs and different lanes and so. Do you guys have numbers of success rates? I mean, the combination sounds interesting, but is there?
How do you define success?
Well, that's what I want to know. The reason I'm asking, my primary ventures are dealing with individuals in the military, but everything in the military is success based. I mean, you have to have numbers to justify the moves or programs that you put in place. You guys, it sounds great. I mean, what you guys have here, but can it be duplicated?
So when I'm talking about programs, and I say this from both my professional position and my own life experience, using the word success and the work that we do is a very, I'm not gonna say dangerous word to use, but it's a very undefinable term because success to me was becoming a father. Success to a client I just talked to yesterday was going 3 hours without putting a needle on his arm and living to see the sun come up the next day. And so I like to talk about positive outcomes. And as an agency, we track a lot of different measures. People that are unhoused when they enter services and that are housed by the time they get out of services. People that are employed or unemployed become employed. People who have food insecurity become food secure. People who were not previously engaged with their children are engaged with their children. There's people that are not connected to any type of community-based recovery support become connected to these things. It could be clothing. It could be some of those bare necessities. And so using the term successful or success in measuring a program it's very difficult to do because what is successful to me or Jessica as two people in recovery, if you told us both to define success, it would be a completely different answer. And I have countless clients right now that if I walked them through that door and you asked them, was this program successful and helpful to them? They would say yes. And half of those people could still be using, half those people could still be homeless. But to them, they've achieved success because their life is better today than it was when they came into services. Who am I to determine or to tell them what that needs to look like? That's for them to decide what is successful and what is positive outcome. You know, for recovery, to me, is my life being better than it was yesterday. My life being better than it was when I started this journey. And so that's, to me, what every individual has a right to answer what that is to them. And so it's not my place to tell them what success looks like.
I was just gonna say, but there are measures, right? Like you talked about measures, so tracking who has gained housing, who has their children, or even visiting their children, who is their depression less, is their anxiety less, are they taking their medication as prescribed, do they have access to the medication? I mean, those are things that you could track that turn out to be success, right? Whatever that is for them. But yeah, it is, I agree with the success thing, it's different for everyone, but you do you have to speak to how are we spending the dollars, right? I mean, I think that's, you have to justify how you're spending the dollars, and I think that we do that, but each agency does it a little different.
Thank you all. I do want to be mindful of time, so I'll invite Patrick Schmitz, the CEO of Bert, Nash Center, resource and closing words.
One other thing to your question about outcomes and stuff, our county, for the money that we get to do this, does expect outcomes and does track some of that. Some of that data is fairly new as we come together, but if you want money, you have to participate in the data collection. And so we are gathering that, and some of that might be available on their website as well. So actually find that and share some of that out there. So thank you, all of you, for being here tonight, for sharing your experience, your professional experience, your life experience. As Jim Casari always shares, one of our former peers who's retired is strength, hope, and courage. Thank you. I knew I'd blank out when I came up. I should have wrote it down. Thank you for that. Thank you for Merit Trust for sponsoring, Merit Trust Credit Union for sponsoring and a committed partner to us. They've done many of these for us, and we really appreciate that opportunity. Really appreciate the opportunity to come together and talk about the importance of treating both mental health and substance use disorders together. Literally, when I got started, we got trained in both, but you can only do one or the other. You had to send that person to across the street. And I knew how frustrating that was for me because I knew they weren't making it. And I wasn't allowed to do both. So thank you for the work that you're doing in bringing those together and making it possible to treat a person as a whole person, just like how we all experience life ourselves. If you're interested in getting more involved at Bert Nash Center, please consider attending the Discover Bert Nash, signing up for a mental health first aid training, whether that's here or anywhere, or come in and help us build care kits that we provide to people who come in for services that just kind of help ease their way. You can find this information on our website at bertnash.org. Be on the lookout for our next series of the Nash Cares Community Education. We will do that again in May, and I think we're working on the topic as we speak.
Actually, we just decided.
Oh, I wasn't in that meeting.
The topic will be on gender affirming care.
Excellent. Great, thank you. Thank you all again for attending. Thank all of you. Please travel safely. Go Chiefs.